Hi, I'm Brian Lambert. Welcome to another edition of The Facts as We Know Them. The Facts, if you haven't caught us in our first 2 years of production, is easily the most excitable news talk show in the Twin Cities area, featuring some of the keenest wits and most unbridled egos of Twin Cities journalists.
You must have changed the format.
For those who you have seen our show, it's basically the same old shtick, only in a new upscale package. Here at the bar at Spazzo's Restaurant in beautiful, livable St. Paul. Our cast today includes, please join me in welcoming my close personal friend, every insider's favorite name dropper, Mr. David Carr from the Corporate Report magazine, Corporate Report Minnesota, excuse me. Next to him, sometimes feature writer and close friend of the Twin City readers, media guy, Mr. Adam Platt. And next to him, he used to be a media critic. Now he's a real writer of the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch, Mr. Nick Coleman. Adam, let's start with you. You're on the spot. You're getting paid a lot to do this show.
Yes, I am. Thank you, by the way.
KSTP has now slid to third place in the 10 o'clock news ratings war. Who really cares? What does it matter? Who's going to lose their job over this? And is this a permanent affliction for the Hubbard Empire?
Oh, yeah, I think semi-permanent at least. I don't think that they have much to do to keep News 11 out of second or even first. I think WCCO is in trouble, and not just KSTP. I think in the long run...
It's the impact of cable.
Yes, this show primarily. I think in the long run, CCO is going to have a harder time than even Channel 5, because...
Why do people keep saying that? What? I mean, why is Channel 4 at risk?
So what's
Channel 4 is at risk because their audience is primarily older adults, people 50 years and older. They're having developing the same problem that WCCO radio has. That their audience is, for lack of a better term, dying off, and they're not replacing it.
Where are the numbers to support this?
I think that they've made some inroads among younger viewers. Their main problem is that NBC is picking off all the viewers for Channel 11. Nobody ever used to watch that station. It used to be an independent station. Nobody even knew the numbers. And,
sure.
Now there's a big audience out there for Channel 11, and some of them are, they're seeing all those promos for what Rick Shevchuk calls Clubhouse 11. I mean, all the nutty boys and girls up there in the newsroom, and they're staying tuned at night. But I think what's interesting to me is that Hubbard Broadcasting, this pioneering TV station, known around the world as an innovator and a very important TV operation, is for the first time in history flat on its butt, and it's probably not likely to get up for quite a while. And it's kind of
course, they're making news like this was a October fluke, and by November
they've said that. They always say that in October.
I think you have seen over time a very steady erosion of their numbers, and this is the natural culmination of it. But I wonder if you guys, aren't you at all concerned that a station that puts labels on the people they interview, like Saw the Murder, or
Lucky to Be Alive,
or Lucky to Be Alive, is really hitting the big time?
Zilch?
Yeah. Doesn't that worry you?
Oh, it's a very easy newscast to watch, and that's the main point.
I feel exactly the opposite way. I think it's the hardest newscast to watch in the world.
But it's easy to watch if you don't want bad news.
I agree with Adam. Well, I think it's news for the information impaired. I mean, it's not. You don't have to be interested in news to watch Channel 11 and to enjoy it. I mean, that's what makes it easy to watch.
I talked to Tom Kirby, the news director over there, earlier this week for a reader story I'm doing, and trying to break down how much news his station actually has, and he tells me that he considers stories about kittens news, that the Prep Sports Extra is news about what the kids are doing, and so it's just a whole different philosophy, and you either like it or you don't, but it's traditional journalists really.
Recently, I should say, they let off with a 4 or 5 minute bit on some construction work on the Northwest side, how cold he was on a cold day, and then got down to the business of
these folks
of real news.
These folks are still amazed at how cold it is up here. they lead with chilly weather stories all the time, and when it comes,
you're wearing your scarf. What are you talking about?
Well, that's just because Eric Eskela has refused to show up. They lead with these weather stories, and when it comes to a real news story, a la the election, those of you who stayed with KARE during the election.
All right, so we can't explain why they're doing so well.
Well, they stunk it up on election night. It was absolutely pathetic. They couldn't get the names right. They couldn't, and
they got the bomb scare though.
They did get the bomb scare over and over and over again, but you still couldn't find out how Tom Dashley, in whatever state he was in, was doing.
Where was he?
Dakota.
South Dakota.
Who cares about South Dakota? I mean,
They're 50th.
I mean, I think there are some. We shouldn't insult the news audience. I mean,
No.
there are reasons they're watching Channel 11. Paul Majors is probably the best, most effective news anchor in town, in my opinion. They have a nice, slick format, and they're on a network. They're a network affiliate of the most popular network in the country right now. Those things are going to work magic for anybody, and you can pick apart how well they do the news, and I don't think that they do it very well, but they have some things really going.
So why not insult their viewers, though? You're describing a nothing sandwich, you know?
People don't know. How are you in a position to watch them and know if what you're getting is accurate and in proper detail unless you're monitoring all other sorts of media? If that's your only outlet, you know, it looks nice.
If you're seeing
cold.
8 minutes on a kitten and 6 minutes on a cold construction worker, I mean, you must know there's something else going on in the world.
It may not matter.
But back to Hubbard, what are their
Oh,
alternatives?
they're in real trouble.
Did they say anything to you?
Well, they've got Larry Price, the news director, told me that you can't take on 11, that he's got to go for 4's audience, which is shrinking. They've got trouble. I've heard Rick Shevchik said that Cindy Brucato offered her services
Well, how did he differentiate between 4's audience and 11's audience?
Oh, well, 4's audience is a hard news audience to him, and 11's audience is an audience that wants to be entertained. And he believes that they have advantages because they have an experienced reporting staff and they want to be aggressive and they want to break stories. But then he admits this isn't very much of a hard news town. So it's a double-edged sword.
Is that true?
Well, I think he's wrong about that.
Yeah.
I think it is a hard news town, and I think on Channel 5, if you watch them, and I watched them during the baseball playoffs. And by the way, that baseball playoffs thing he said wasn't a very hot ticket or
was a
something
big
like that.
rating.
It was, you know, they should have got their big numbers after the baseball playoffs. I mean,
'Cause who else you gonna watch?
everybody was watching.
Yeah.
But you know, they have done a good job covering the news. I mean, I think they are one of the most competitive spot news television stations in the country, and this is a hard news market, or it has been until
5 you're talking about.
until recently. Yeah, 5 is an excellent station, but they've shot themselves in the foot 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years. Plus, they belong to a sinking network. You know, I mean, that is their major problem. Changing faces faster than you can put up those signs on the buses, and
Supposedly,
belonging to ABC, it's really been a combination that's hurt them.
I heard they want, depending on whose story you take, they either wanted Cindy Brucato, Hubbard wanted Cindy Brucato back on the news, or she wanted back and he liked it, but Bob Rigalbuto, the program director, and Larry Price, the news director, said no way. So they were ready to throw things up in
No
the air.
word
I
from
think
Cindy.
Hubbard was.
I think it will be very interesting to see how Stanley Hubbard reacts to being number 3. His shtick, his public posture, one of arrogance and total self-confidence, actually played pretty good when he was winning. But I really don't know how he's going to find the humility to deal with being number 3.
Yeah, what moves would he be likely to make now?
They got it. They can't.
Inside the mind of Stanley Hubbard.
I don't think they can do a lot.
That's a short trip.
Besides improve what they've got over there, and maybe, as Larry Price put it, increase their bench strength. A couple more good solid
No new
anchors.
face changes.
Well, if they can't start getting rid of people again, and
Let's bring back the
musical
Queen
chairs.
Bee. Let's get Cindy out
I
of
think
the
they should.
gun.
I think they should bring back Brucato, and I think that they made mistakes by getting rid of Felkin and Bruce. They shot. It was like the purges during the Stalin's era. I mean, they'd say, "Come
Start
out
of
in the
Ukraine.
hallway, boy," and then all of a sudden you hear a gunshot come out in the hallway, and you never see this guy again. And they offed everybody on their news set, and they ought to bring back at least
Spoken like a
Brucato.
hunter.
They ought to bring back Brucato, and they ought to. They don't have. Doesn't mean they have to get rid of Ruth Spencer, who I think has done well. But I mean, they need to work Brucato back into the lineup and put some familiar faces.
I would tune in to get a look at Cindy Brucato again, and I think a lot of people would. It would at least give them some initial mileage, and people would give their newscast another look.
You know, one of the things that always bothers me is you never see anything about the newspaper. I mean, we are part of the meeting, aren't we? Am I right, or Amarillo? Right?
You're Amarillo.
That's right. So we have a little surprise, you know, for some of the stars in our midst. David went out in pursuit of opinions from the well-informed, and we have a bit of tape. Let's go to the highlight film. The facts we know them highlight film.
think it's called it.
Hello, I'm David Carr, correspondent at large for the new and improved version of the Facts as we know them. Today we're at the Pioneer Press and Dispatch here to talk about Nick Coleman, columnist extraordinaire, professional Minnesota trivia buff, very amateurish violinist, and father of 2 surprisingly good-looking children. This week we're going to talk to folks about what they want to know about the man behind the nose. Things like, how does Nick get his coat to lay over his shoulder like that? And what was it really like to work at the Minneapolis Star and Tribune? Come with us as we head upstairs. Teresa, what's the one question you've always really wanted to ask Nick Coleman?
Oh, where he got those beautiful eyes from.
Do you think a man with a nose as large as his should be allowed to write a newspaper column in a major metropolitan newspaper?
Well, with my schnoz, I don't think I'm in a position to criticize.
Jim, what is the one question you've always wanted to ask Nick Coleman?
What he does with his hair.
You mean how he gets that special sort of look?
Yeah, how it looks like he has so much when it's really all going away.
Okay, we're talking with Pat Royce, another one of the outstanding columnists at the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch. We're wondering what Pat might ask Nick Coleman if you had the opportunity. Any personal question or question about his style as a columnist?
Well, I don't know what I'd ask him. I think I'd tell him that the column he wrote today on deer hunting, this is, Tuesday, November 11th, was the perfect column because it was a little offensive to people on both sides of the issue. It offended the serious deer hunter, and it also succeeded in offending the people who are against the anti-hunting forces. So to me, that was the perfect column.
That's from Pat Royce, a man who practically has a patent on offensive. One more question, Pat. Do you think a man with a nose the size of Nick Coleman should be allowed to write a column?
Well, I don't know. I'm not one to criticize other people's physical attributes too often, for obvious reasons.
I'm standing here in Nick Coleman's pod. As you can see, it's right in the middle of the day, and Nick's nowhere to be found. Nick brings his lunch, so we all are left to wonder what exactly Nick is doing. Jackie, we're interested in what question you might ask Nick Coleman if you had the opportunity, be it personal or business or about his style as a columnist.
Is he really only my age?
And what age might that be, Jackie?
Mid-30s.
Could you be a little more specific?
He has more gray hair than I do. I'm jealous.
Almost everybody has more gray hair than you do. Jackie, do you think a man with the nose the size of Nick Coleman should be allowed to write a major metro newspaper column and have his mug plastered all over the Twin Cities on newspaper boxes?
It's neither his nose nor his mug I'm interested in.
Could you be a little more specific?
No, I'd rather not.
Well, I'm told that he uses squirt guns to discipline his cats. I'd like to know if that keeps them from pooping on the floor.
That's absolutely correct. Nick does use squirt guns, and they're indeed battery-powered variety. Do you think that a man who disciplines his cats with water should be allowed to write a newspaper column?
Nah, no, definitely not.
There you have it. Gene's the expert. I'm standing here with one of the absolute rank goddesses of Twin Cities journalism, Catherine Lanford. Catherine, I wonder if you have any question that you might ask Nick Coleman if you had the opportunity.
Why is he such a perv?
Could you be a little more specific?
Well, there's the time he put the banana in and out of his mouth. There's all the candy corn he throws at people. I don't know that about.
Do you think that Nick is working out some sexual issues in his newspaper column?
Definitely.
We're talking with Brian Bonner, the self-described future of the franchise at the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch. Brian sits merely feet away from the famed Nick Coleman, and we're wondering if he has any questions he'd care to ask Nick about his professional or personal life.
His professional or personal life?
Are you aware that he has one of either?
I see him floating around once in a while. I hear he's sort of a weak kid. He had a lot of allergies as a kid, but he's grown out of that. Beyond that, I really don't know too much about the man.
Are you at all interested in Nick Coleman?
He's still writing for the TV column. No, he's a Metro columnist now. Yeah, once in a while I'll pick him up if I buy the trip.
I'd like to know what he really does with all the freebies that he's still getting from TV production companies and the like now that he's no longer a television critic.
Are you aware that just before we came in here, we were able to buy a Dallas t-shirt out of the back of Nick Coleman's trunk?
How much do you want for it?
Well, I'd just like to know what it's like working with your stepmother.
Do you think that Nick actually pretty much got the job because it was his stepmother involved?
Do you know Deb Howell? I don't think so.
We're talking to Joe Soucheray, certainly a fellow Tribune expatriate and one of the columnists at the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch. Nick and Joe fight for space, cat and dog, every day at the Pioneer Press. There's been open wrestling out on the floor. We're wondering if Joe has any question he might ask his peer on the Metro page.
One thing I'd like to know is 9 times out of 10 he's not here. Where is he? Why isn't he here? I never see him. I just see these ridiculously trite columns in the paper. And there's no Coleman around. Is there a Coleman? I haven't met him since he got over here. So you tell me.
That's Joe Soucheray, a man who seems always to be here.
So where are you?
It's an easy target. Hey, well, Soucheray's comments, I mean, those are the grousings of a guy who's got to work hard for a living.
Yeah, but I didn't get the feeling any of these people knew where you were. You know, I mean, all of us people can show up in our office.
So there's a natural resentment of people who, comes easy for. I'm out there on the street soaking up the life and the culture, and then I come in and I whip something off, and they're mad because they got to work 8 hours a day.
And what about the sexual issues you're working at?
I think these are Carr's sexual issues. I mean, all these questions about the size of my nose. It's well known. It's well known that the size of the nose is in direct proportion to the size of other parts of the body. Like my feet.
You do have big feet.
You should see my big feet. But I think Carr's fascination with my nose tells you more about Carr than it does about me.
I really think that it's been wonderful that there's been a certain kind of continuity. John Camp used to occupy the same space.
But Oliver Town did.
Well, kind of. Nick's kind of midway between. And Camp would just talk about what happened to him on the way to work, coming in from Cottage Grove. Now folks are getting the same stories, only it's about what happened to Nick on the drive over from Minneapolis.
Yeah. How many slugs he pumped into innocent animals over the weekend.
Yeah, it's the stuff of life. Yeah. Let's face it.
It is, and it's it's hard. You have to get out there and live life in order to write about what happened to you. You can't just sit at your desk and write about what happens to you. That's what I think Soucheray should get out more often. But I do hear him making a lot of appointments for golfing. When I am in, he does seem to work hard at lining up golf partners.
Well, not everybody has the joie de vivre, if you will, to just go out and bounce around.
I had that, but I took care of it. What are you talking about?
He shot that with a squirt gun.
The only time I think Nick's column has gone beyond the banal or the...
when did it fly, Dave?
Is when he talks politics. The guy, just by virtue of his birth, I guess, is got a certain amount of innate...
and one of the better ones, good segue, is the business of the religious right. I meant to promise people a fast rehash, the election news, and...
very smooth.
There wasn't an
nice segue, Brian.
There was.
There wasn't an election.
There was no election.
A long time ago.
How dead is are the anti-abortion forces and?
Well, I don't think the anti-abortion forces are dead, and I don't think that they should go away. But I think that what is dead is an attitude that there are no limits, and that the extremists in the Republican Party can go as far as they want, don't have to compromise with anybody, and can really play hardball and muscle man and just kick the doors down and do whatever they want. That kind of attitude in the last legislature, especially on issues like welfare, cutting the 30% the benefits to welfare people without any concern for what anybody else thought. I think that really hurt the Republican Party, and it's bringing the moderates back to the fore, and most of those extreme right and religious right-wing people in the Republican Party have been defeated in the legislature.
I think I agree with Nick in that I think the election was more of a referendum on style than substance. I think the majority of Minnesotans want government to be very tight-fisted and be very, careful with their money, but they don't want the rhetoric, they don't want the seeming uncaring attitude that goes with it. Nick's right in that a lot of the hardballs, the guys that were just, that seemed relatively unconcerned with people who were
Such
less...
as?
Well, Joel Carlson's a good example. He had problems of his own in Moorhead, but he's out, and he was one of the rising stars. Those guys seem like...
What do you think? Is he part of a cycle? I mean, 4 years from now, people like him be back? I mean, have they been mortally wounded? Are we looking to a new crop of conservatives that...
I don't know. I think that you're going to see, there's conservatism in the Republican Party is going to be a continue. I mean, that's part of their message, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I think is not going to be back, at least not for a long time, is this terribly uncompromising, really kick rear end kind of conservatism that was represented by the Joel Carlsons of the party. And I think
Dave Jennings?
And Dave Jennings, too. Dave Jennings was a very immoderate Speaker of the House, and you hear the Republicans now all talking about we need to be more reasonable, a little more moderate, correct our image a little bit.
They're talking about acting more like human beings, I think, pretty much.
Isn't part of that because many of those real conservative social issues aren't that relevant to people at this point, especially in southwest and western Minnesota?
Yeah, well, I don't think they were the issues that cut in this election. That's for sure. I think that the whole social agenda of conservatism is going to be having a rough time of it because the titular head of that, Ronald Reagan, I think his mandate pretty much ground to a halt out in the middle of the prairie out here, and without that kind of spiritual leadership, if you will, from the White House, they're going to have problems maintaining the whole momentum of social change.
Do you think it was looking nationally, you think it actually was the Midwest that delivered the blow to this, the farm issues?
Oh, I love the kind of message that has been sent. I mean, in both Dakotas, Democrats took the Senate seats, and there was a column in the Fargo, the Grand Forks, was it the Fargo Forum?
No. Grand Forks Herald?
I'm confused with the Grand Forks Herald, yes. There was a column when Reagan visited North Dakota to boost the candidacy of Republican Mark Andrews for the Senate. The columnist suggested, I really love this kind of writing.
Chuck Haga it was.
Yeah. Chuck Haga. Yeah, that if Reagan would walk into a potato field and relieve himself, he could double his contribution to the nation's farm problems. And I think that kind of attitude is the reason why this message was sent nationally. I think people, they don't believe necessarily the government can solve all the problems or that it even should, but I think they believe that the attitude has been really uncaring and unforgiving, and they want more concern.
I think part of the joy I take as a knee-jerk Democrat is that every place Reagan showed up,
his candidates lost.
The candidates lost. In fact, every place that Rudy Boschwitz, who was positioning himself as a would-be kingmaker on a national basis by contributing money strategically, every place he showed up, they lost. And he admitted as much on election night that he could not figure out that he hadn't chose well, and that maybe it was a problem of not finding quality candidates or whatever, but that he didn't do very well.
I think the Senate race in North Dakota is a great example of Reagan's coattails being it's as a backlash. Andrews was a liberal Republican. He didn't vote with Reagan on a lot of things. He didn't vote with Reagan at all on the farm issues, and he still lost.
Yeah, well, and there was a separate issue up there, and then Andrews was kind of seen as somewhat arrogant. And Reagan's coattails, I think, like the rest of them, are coated with Teflon, and they're a slippery thing to grab onto and use.
Statewide, David, election night, you made an interesting comment about Cal Ludeman and that he hadn't embraced the party as well as he could have. And how did that fit into his strategy? Is that right?
Well, you could tell.
He didn't use Dernberger and some of the people
that's correct. And also, just in fairness, they were not exactly running to embrace him. I mean, when
what was the dynamic there?
Well, when Rudy Boschwitz got up after Cal was nominated, he kind of gave him one of these kind of hugs, like this, and No, they couldn't. It's what Nick is talking about. Is these are a couple different sets of people, and they don't know how to talk to each other in a reasonable way that's going to win elections. There just is not the capacity for dialogue that you need. Cal could have had Dave Durenberger standing next to him on TV. Dave Durenberger is the most popular politician in the state. Cal chose not to do that.
And why?
Well, because I really couldn't say, but theoretically that. That Dave Durenberger has been soft or perceived as soft on some of the social issues.
You don't think it was a case of them looking at Ludeman as a hopeless candidate, that they didn't want to get that close to him?
Durenberger made the offer.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ludeman didn't choose to pick up on it. That's what I heard.
What about how did Durenberger come out of this then? And out of the Minnesota election, how does he set up 2 years down the line?
I think he looks great.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be having as many problems in his party.
He had always set some distance between himself and the religious right and conservatives in his party.
I saw one of his top aides at the state Republican convention, standing out in the hall all by himself. I said, what are you doing here? He says, I have no idea. I said, how come you're all alone? He says, because I don't know any of these people.
Yeah.
These are not our people. In other words, these are not the people that elected us.
And that's, we should say, the problem that the Republicans are going to continue to have is that even though many of these, their most extreme right-wing religious fundamentalist candidates have been defeated in the legislature, they still control the party apparatus, and they control the party's committees and the whole organizational structure. And it's going to take, if the moderates want to reclaim the Republican Party in the state, it's not, they just can't walk in. They're going to have to fight their way in, despite the election reverses.
One of the ways that they might get some control is by, they have continued at least nominally to contribute to these causes, but you saw an exit of moderate Republican money going to Latimer, going to Perpich, business money going to Perpich, and even the most rigid social conservative knows how to count and knows that money is what makes politics go. And if the purse strings are drawn tight, then they might begin to show a lot more flexibility in who's controlling the party.
David, don't you think that Durenberger's fate hinges a great deal on who his opponent is in '88?
Oh, I don't think there's much doubt about who his opponent is going to be. It's a guy named Humphrey.
The Skipster?
Yeah. Skippy.
Can he beat the Skipster?
I don't know. Yeah, I get. I mean, I don't.
Durenberger?
Yeah.
That is going to be the most interesting race in years. I would.
That's what we said about.
I say it's a toss-up. I mean, it's a toss-up.
About Ludeman and Perpich,
Ludeman and Perpich. No way.
No, but what we thought it was going to be was Dave Jennings and Rudy Perpich.
Yeah, that's okay. And if they had been on the ballot, that might have been more interesting. But I mean, I would say Humphrey and Durenberger are a toss-up right now, today. It's 2 years away, and anything can happen. But that's going to be a good race.
Maybe it'll get dirty.
It has the potential of being very hard fought, and when races are hard fought, they can get a little dirty. Yeah.
I think that Skip Humphrey, whom for a long time I really had trouble taking seriously, just because he came from, mostly big name power and stuff like that. The guy has made a series of just excellent political moves. The party is his. The party is his.
Yeah.
He has helped bring along the party.
There's no feeling within the party that he's running on his name. I mean,
Who cares?
although that name would be of terrific help in a campaign.
Yeah, no, nobody cares. People respect the heck out of that name, with good reason.
Yeah, I mean, you got about anybody named after a big sports facility in downtown Minneapolis. That gives an entree with a lot of people.
They pay every time they see him. Okay, well, new and improved. We're done.
Well, that's up to our audience.
That's
we'll
right.
Let them be the judge.
Call in, you tell us. We'll be back. It'll probably be 3 weeks. We've got to take some time off for Thanksgiving. Mr. Escala, if he deigns to do so, will be back and join us again. Thank you to Mr. Coleman, Mr. Platt, and Mr. Carr.
My pleasure.
The facts as we know them, now in Continental Cablevision at Spazos.